Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Harika. So in this video, we are going to see, basically I have the pointers, what I'm going to cover under this playlist. So if you just observe, these are the points that I'm going to talk about during this whole video. So by end of the video, you can understand what is data service. Even if you don't know what it is, right from the scratch, I'm going to talk about it. And what are the different actions that we can perform using the UiPath data service, and a few terminology around it, like what are entities, what are fields, and what are records, and what are the different data types or the arguments that we are passing into the data. Okay, so I'm going to talk about all these points, and I'm going to create some entities and fields in this video. So you can learn what is a data service and everything related to it right from the scratch. By end of this video, you can even able to work on the data service. So just on a high level, I'm going to provide you what are the things that I'm going to cover under data service in the future videos. So I'm going to talk about what are the prerequisites to connect the data service to our UiPath Studio, and how you can link with the after the prerequisites, how you can link both of them, and how we can access the entities from data service in our studio. And once after we could access, there is some initialization process that we have to do to proceed further. So how to initialize those values. So this comes under my second video, and I'm also going to talk about what are the different activities that we have for data service package, and how we can create entities in the data service with an example. So if you have watched the demo video, I have shown you how I have used a workflow and how I replaced whole arguments or the variables. And just by using the minimum number of variables, I have created entities in the data service from the studio. So I'm going to provide you a step-by-step guide for that particular video, so that you can also recreate something of that sort, and you can also create entities from the studio into the data service. And after that, we will explore what are the different activities that we have in the data service, and each of the activity I'm going to explain you with example, so that you can also apply it in your projects. So this is all I'm going to cover in the data service playlist. So without any delay, let's get into the first video and the things that I'm going to discuss or here. So basically, what is a data service? So we all know how important data is to work on any of the processes, right? So we use multiple storage places, like sometimes we use Excel's database, or any other cloud. We use all this kind of environments to store our data. So data service is one such place where we can store the data. But the good thing about it is, if we have to change anything with respect to the existing data, we don't have to use any coding. So it's very simple. You just have to provide in the data, and the data gets reflected as per whatever the changes that we've made. So we'll soon see that how we can do that, and how easy it's to modify the data without any coding. So what all actions that we can perform? So as we all know, just like how the other storage areas work, like we can create the data, we can fetch the data, we can update the data, we can delete the data. So these are the different actions that you can perform. And also we have some permissions that's been given to a particular user based on the requirement. So that also is enabled or disabled based on our requirement. That also we will see practically going forward, but on a high level, to make you understand what this actually is and what are the actions that we can perform. So this is all it is about. And now let's talk about the terminology, because this is crucial, right? So what are the entities, what are fields, and what are records? So just imagine, for your understanding purpose, entity or entities or something like, so let's say you have data stored in different tables. So just consider entity as one such table. So I'll shortly show you what an entity is, but for some understanding, just consider entity as a table, data table. So inside a data table, we have rows and columns. So fields are something like a column. So we have particular data table inside which definitely there has to be a column name, right? So fields are something that indicates the columns, and records are the rows inside that particular data table. So just that. We will see now what are the entities or actually are, and how the fields are there, and how the records can be inside that particular entity. So let's consider clients. Okay, these four are different entities. So as soon as you log in into your cloud account, so first let me tell you how you can reach to the data service. So firstly, if you don't have data service on your cloud account, you don't have to worry, just go to admin, and in admin you can find something called licenses. It's taking a bit longer, just bear with me. Okay, let me sign in again. Okay, no problem. So here you have tenants, and just go to this thing and you have tenant settings. So here you just have to enable data service. So once that is enabled, you can see data service over here. Just select it and it just comes into your taskbar. Okay. So once after you're in the UiPath data service, what all you have to do is, first, you will not be having all these entities, but system users is the default one. It's created by the system user. So by default, you will get this particular entity. I don't think you have an option to delete or edit this thing, just like how we can do for all other entities. So this is disabled completely. It's not for our use. So let's talk about something else. Here we have three different entities, right? So in the same way, I have an option to create new entity. So let's go over here. So what is my entity name? Test entity. Okay. So as soon as you give here the name, let's say if you are giving with spaces, this is the default name, that would be coming up over here without the spaces or without any special characters. So this is the name. And if you wanted to provide any description, just to test how entity would look like, you can give the description over here, which comes upon and sits here in the description, and that's it. You save. So we have created a data table for our understanding. Okay, so test entity is here. So what is needed inside the entity? The rows and the columns. That means the fields and the records. So let's go and check it out here. So if you see, we have ID created by created time, updated by updated time. So these are also the system built-in fields. So these are the fields actually. So if you just go to data, and if you see, you have an option to add the data. Okay, but before to that, let's understand these things. So we have an these are all the system built-in. So, and the same applies for this also. We cannot edit or delete this particular things. So, and also we cannot add any data into this, right? We cannot add, edit or delete these things. But if you wanted to add a data, you should have a field which you creates. Okay, so for that, I'm going to create a new field. So for that, what I'm going to do here, I would provide test field 1. Okay, and it should be, we have different data types, right? So let's talk about data types later. So first, let's give it as a text, and you have to mention if it's required or not, like how is it mandatory or not. So if it's a mandatory option, you have to provide in what is the default value for it. So you have to say like something by default, it would come up if the value is not provided. And what is the maximum length of it? 200 something, whatever. And as I already mentioned you, what is the roles for this? So let's look at this in detail later. So I'm going to save this. So all I'm going to do is, first, entity has been created, the table, and then the field, the column name is created. So you can see the test field 1 here. And now if you go to the data, you have an option to add new data. So just go and add new data. So by default, this value is given. Okay, so let's say if you wanted to provide a value, I would say my name. Just save this. If you see, first record has been created. So once after you add data, the records will be created this way. So let's go to the fields, and I'm going to add a new field, which is test field 2. And then if to type text and then save it. And if I click on add data now I'll get two fields, two column names or something of that sort, because in the previously we were having only one field for the previous time. Now we have two different fields, right? Now I'm going to say the field got created, and if you see for the previous one we don't have the field 2 because at that time field 2 was not created. So that's how I hope you got the clarity on entity, field, and the records, right? It's just like a this whole thing is an entity. This whole thing comes under test entity. These are the fields, just like the columns that we have, and these are the records, this like the rows. So it's quite simple, you don't have to worry about the terminology here. So once that's done, let's talk about data types. What are the different data types that we have? So let's create a new field. Here, if you just observe, 3, I'm going to create test field 3, and then the type of the data, which is mandatory. So if you just open this, you have multiple data types, right? So we all know file data type, we all know choice set. It's like a kind of, let's, if you just see here, we have, once after you select choice set, let's talk about choice set very detailedly in future videos, but for now we will cover the major types. So we all know what is a text. It's kind of a string, and number we know integer. Yes or no is a boolean type, and date time. If you select date time, we have an option whether to hide the time. So let's say you want only the date. So you have an option to hide the date field. Okay, sorry, time field. So it's of something of that sort. And the major thing we have to talk here about is a relationship. So what is a relationship and how we can use that particular data type? So let's talk about it. So now, before I talk about it, let's come over here and see. So these were the different entities that were created, right? So this is test entity. So in case if I have a data which is just like a lookup, consider like a lookup. If you have two different data tables, if you want to map a particular column or a particular value or a cell in one data table to another data table, so what you do, you apply a lookup, right? Or you perform it using a link query or something of that sort. So in the same way, if one value is related to another value in two different entities, we gonna relate them using a data type called relationship. Okay, don't get confused. I'll show you how we can do that in a short time. So I'm going to create a field. So here I'm going to tell that test relationship field. Okay, so this is my field name. So I am going to relate this particular field. So I am going to use that as a relationship. Okay, and we have to provide, right? So let's say if there is another data table, so we have to tell to which data table it is related. So for that, I'm going to take any of these, like these are all my entities, right? So I'm going to take clients and to which field it is exactly related. So I would say to the email. Okay, so this field in this particular entity, test entity, is related to the email field in the client's entity. So that's how we are just creating a relationship between two different entity fields. I hope this is clear. I just want to convey that this particular thing, this particular data type is very much important here, because as and when we are dealing with the data, we generally come across data types like this, right? So we wanted to create a relationship and then we want to fetch something out of it. Okay, so this is one important thing that you have to keep in mind. So that's about a relationship. We have seen the different data types, and also I believe this is clear. just do some hands-on, like how you can create the data, how you can create the fields and entities and everything from your side, so that it will be clear understanding for you also. And you, if you can keep some data handy with you, we can try to work with it in the future videos. And I believe I have covered everything that I have for this particular session. So I would see you how we can, what are the prerequisites are there, and how we can link the data service to the studio, and how we can do some activities so that we can fetch the data and we can query the data and everything in the studio. So I hope this video is useful. Do subscribe to my channel so that you will get the video once after I upload. Thank you so much for watching.